What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Coach Joe Strong, here to bring you another powerful episode of the Business of Strength podcast, where you can hear the interviews, tips, and tools to turn your business into a profitable legacy gym that you will absolutely love. Do not forget, we have our next live event, May 9th and 10th, right here in New York, Weightroom Wealth. It's going to be a 2 day explosion of information on managing your money, managing your budgets, setting guidelines for your finances, and the marketing you need to get leads in the door right away, marketing that sells. It's going to be a great event. We have some awesome guest speakers, none other than Devin Levesque, the owner and founder of ProMix and Sweet Honey Farms and several other brands. Devin is a serial entrepreneur. He's a killer in the fitness space. And we're really excited to have him on board. Also, along with none other than our good buddy Zach Evanesh and some of our Business of Strength Mastermind members who are going to be sharing their best tips and tactics that they've used over the past year to generate massive amounts of leads, create action, and manage the money in their business. Don't forget, you can go to businessofstrength.com, click on the live events link, sign up today, and save. Let's go. Okay, get that done. Save money, time, and energy. All right, today we got a special guest, Scott Leech. Scott is the head strength and conditioning coach at the University of Rhode Island Rams football. He is a local to the area. He was friends with Dan and I, and we coming off the heels of speaking at the NSCA event that he hosted. We had a great time out there. Dan spoke at that event, and Scott is awesome. And we talked a lot about building culture, evaluating talent on both the on the employee side, and how to turn some of your ideas and prowess and information into other revenue streams. Scott has gone off and created a private sector revenue stream selling digitized programs for specifically for high school football coaches and their families and so forth to improve their strength, speed, power, and performance. So he's really been diving into that. He's building out a whole suite of programs that coaches can utilize at their disposal to improve their strength systems and such, and or families can buy them too to use them for themselves. So it's a great testament to having a little bit of an entrepreneurial mindset and thinking outside the box, thinking outside the 9 to 5, outside of your normal, let's call it like job duties, and utilizing your platform, your passion to create more and do more within the community. So it was a great conversation with Scott. Lots of golden nuggets, lots of great takeaways. As always, it's always awesome to have a professional strength and conditioning coach on the collegiate side, a little bit of a different perspective than the private sector stuff we're usually talking about. But Scott's done an amazing job of bridging the gap on both sides of that and really creating something special. So this is the Business of Strength. Listen up, Scott Leech, everybody, take it away. What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Coach Joe Strong, and I am here with my friend Scott Leech, the head strength and conditioning coach at the University of Rhode Island Rams. And Scott is up to some really cool stuff. We're just coming off the heels of an awesome NSCA event up in Rhode Island where Scott was the master of ceremony, if you will, Scott, and put that together. It was a great opportunity to meet a lot of strength coaches from around the area, and I thought the event was a lot of fun. Dan obviously had the opportunity to speak, so I'm biased that my partner was there speaking. So thanks for coming on, Scott. Thanks for having us up to the NSCA event, and thanks for being willing to work with us and come on the show.
No, I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you guys coming too. I mean, when you're in charge of organizing the event, selfishly, it's like, okay, who do I want to hear from? And Dan was on my list, and business has always been something I've been interested in. And I knew for our audience of strength coaches, we had some private sector people there starting their own gym or having a gym and running that. But there's a lot of people in the other side, the college strength side or high school strength conditioning that want to learn how to make more money. So I thought it was great. I thought Dan crushed it. And then selfishly for me, it's about opening doors and connections and building things from
Sure.
there. So been loving it so far.
Well, I think that's, I mean, we could talk about that. I think that's one of the it's starting to change. And again, I appreciate and applaud you for being willing to kind of change the narrative at what could be perceived through the NSCA as being, all about strength, X's and O's, research-based training and stuff like that, to say, look, like, I don't know, there's a lot of, like, when you look at the events, there's a lot of collegiate strength and conditioning coaches, collegiate pro military coaches, right? And then you have the private sector coaches. And the common denominator across the board is that everybody wants to make more money, wants a better career trajectory, wants more benefits, better work-life balance and stuff like that. So understanding how to generate money, right? Whether it's marketing, sales, and just like creating content, stuff like that, I think is super important for everybody. And when you look at some of the, like, what's called like the legends of strength, the guys like the Cal Dietz of the world, what have they done? They've expanded above and beyond the realm of just what they do at the college level, writing books, speaking circuits, and things like that. So tell me what kind of led to that. Why? I know you've been a champion, especially for us to get a little bit more involved with the NSCA. What is it that made you think of that? Is it similar to what I just said? And like, where's that going? Is it what has been has it been well received? Has it been a little bit of a push, right? And so
Yeah,
forth.
it's one of those things. I'm the Rhode Island state director, so being in charge of the state clinic that we just had, and then also, just kind of being a representative for the NSCA. And I've had a lot of back and forth with them, and it's getting better. Don't get me wrong, it's getting better.
Hmm.
Um, but what is the number one reason for burnout in strength and conditioning? It's not, oh, I couldn't keep up with the science. Oh, training the kids was too hard. Like, no, those are the fun parts of the job. The hard part is you're not making enough money to sustain this and do and
Right,
live this lifestyle. And at some
right,
point, your significant other is going to say, "What are you doing right now? Like, when is this going to turn the corner?" And for
right.
some people, you got to put your head down, you keep grinding, you keep pushing, and then you're going to come out the other side successful. But I always say, and I tell our assistants this, like, the only person that's going to save you is you.
Yeah.
So start working on that. Find ways to make that happen. Um, and then you have security too of, okay, if I'm doing this on the side, I can afford to continue to try and be a college strength coach and grind and make it work, knowing that, okay, this is going to support me a little bit and this is going to help kind of ease the financial burden at home.
Yeah.
The other piece too that I think a lot of people, when they start exploring this and start pushing it, is you find out what you're really interested in and find out what you're passionate about.
Hmm.
Because sometimes you're doing this for college strength and conditioning, but you might be interested in something else. One of my assistants is into triathlon training, right? And
Hmm.
that's kind of his thing and his avenue. And we don't have a triathlon team here, but he can still explore that avenue, pursue that avenue, and then find ways to take his passion and turn it into a profit down the road. So
And be creative. I think like I think a lot of,
it keeps you stimulated,
yeah,
keeps you
yeah,
going, keeps
yeah.
you fresh, and
It's
challenges you.
cool to learn new skills, try new things. I what I loved most about being on the private sector was the unlimited availability of creativity.
Mhm.
And I have a saying that you're only limited by the limitations you place on yourself. In the private sector, again, like most private sector gym owners, obviously there's a lot of reasons in terms of just business acumen and things like that, where they might not be making the money that they want to. In the college sector, it's constraints on payroll schedule and things like that. And just like, top coach might be making good money, assistants are making squazole, and then you have that's Jersey for nothing. And then you have and then you have a bunch of GAs, right, who are basically like, paid interns, right? And so the in the private sector, it can grow to as big as you want. I mean, we have many, many friends who are making millions of dollars a year owning gyms, right? And have, 6, 10, 15, 20 gyms, right? And they're making millions a year doing it. You're really only limited by your creativity. And I think like, on the collegiate side, like yourself, you have such a cool opportunity because you have this built-in demographic, right? To
Yep.
experiment and do research and do cool stuff and utilize, right? And so, nowhere else in training do you get a new wave of like stud athletes every year to train, and that's a pretty cool thing, you
Yeah.
know?
I think one thing too is, as you're talking about that, having the unlimited creativity is also you have permission, right? You have permission to kind of work on these things on your own. And sometimes you need somebody to tell you that, to put
Yeah.
content out there, to put information out there. I think sometimes in this college field, we have a little bit of an imposter syndrome or a little bit of insecurity. Like you are an expert at what you do. You're doing it at the highest level of athletics,
Hmm.
other than the pros, but you're right up there. So yes, share some information on social media. Show what you're interested in, put it out there, and just I think that alone, I think is the first step is share content, share information, put stuff out there. And if you're
Hmm.
the only one that reads your tweets, okay, that's fine for now because somebody's going to be interested in it eventually. It's going to hit the right person sooner or later. And I think too many people are like, oh, no one wants to hear this, or
Yeah.
other strength coaches aren't going to find this interesting. Well, I don't put stuff out there necessarily to help other strength coaches. I think a lot of the stuff I put out there is because I want to give back to the next generation. I work a lot with football players, but I want to make the next generation of football players better than when I grew up. I wish I trained the way I do now. I wish I trained like that back in early 2000s because I'd
Oh
probably
yeah, for
feel a lot
sure.
better right now. I'd probably be a little healthier.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I'm out in my backyard pushing tires and sleds and watching DeFranco videos and saying, oh, why do I make myself throw up today? And
Absolutely.
so I want to provide that next generation, like, okay, here's a better way to train. And so I put that information out there for them. I don't put that out there for other strength coaches and things like that. But if I don't share that information, it never gets out there. It never
Right.
helps the people that it can potentially help. So, at some
Well,
point
I mean, fear of
you have to
failure is a
give
real
yourself
thing.
permission.
Sure. And fear of failure. People are afraid of rejection. People are afraid of, like you said, like nobody's going to want this. People are they're going to, I don't know, they're going to poke fun at it, right? They're going to think another peer might think that my training methodology is no good. And that puts me like in a depressed state. I'm going to lay in bed all day. It's like, I don't know, like, look, like,
Well,
I'm not going to,
you get no likes on your tweet. Oh,
yeah,
you get
yeah.
a hater. Like haters are cool. Like I kind of like that. And then
Yeah, yeah. I mean, haters
they
know that
invented a
somebody's
block
looking.
button. They invented a block button for a reason. You don't want to hear it, just block it.
Yeah, yeah. And
But don't
look,
let any of those things stop you.
no, and failure, and look, and if again, like to quote the man in the arena, right? Better to be marred, by failure than to be the gray twilight of never trying, right? And I see so many people who are really good coaches that just never really step out of their shell or step out of themselves because they like the comfort zone, they don't want to be judged, things like that. So again, like if money's an issue and you're a strength coach in either the collegiate or private sector, right? In the private sector, creativity can lead to better marketing, better sales processes, and things like that, right? Creating pamphlets, brochures, maybe ebooks and lead magnets and stuff like that, which is obviously, on the,
Summer camps, right?
yeah,
Like,
summer camps.
well, you don't learn anything until you to do it. You put yourself out there. There was one summer we did a summer camp here. We had 4 kids sign up.
Oh,
Just like, you know what? But those 4 kids got a phenomenal training experience, and we learned
I'm
how to do
sure.
things like email marketing and put this out there. And you know what? Like, yeah, we only had 4, and it probably didn't turn the profit we wanted it to. But you know what? We learned so much along the way that the next time we do a camp, it's 20, not 4. And then the next time
Yes.
after that, it's 50, not 20. Same thing with running clinics. Like I do the NSCA thing and it's a volunteer position, but I'm getting really good at organizing these conferences and clinics. So then, when I'm done with that role and it's time for me to host my own things, I know how to rent out the facility. I know how to set up the catering for it. I know how to call, speak, and figure out, what price is going to get them here. How do we book the hotels? But you don't learn those things unless you just put yourself out there and try it.
Yeah, you got to do it. And so let's go backwards to go forwards a little bit, Scott.
Okay.
So, talk to me a little bit about your career path and trajectory and how you got to the head coach of a D1 program, right? Which is kind of like where most people are trying to get to, in a sense. When you talk to a young strength coach, nobody's telling me, "Hey, I want to be the head strength coach at Bergen Community College." Like they want to be the head strength coach of a big program. Obviously, we know that those jobs are limited in the numbers that they have. So, talk a little bit about that, and then and again, how that segued into starting to create a little side project and business of training in the private sector side, selling programs and coaching programs to, like you said, high school kids and high school strength coaches to improve their systems and processes and training.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, the side hustles and projects has started even when I first got out of grad school. My first job was Merrimack College, and I wasn't making that much. It was enough. And it's funny, now wife, when we moved in together, she looked at the finances and she said, "Why are all your numbers red? Why aren't they black?" And don't worry about the colors. Just I somehow make it work every month. Don't worry
Yeah,
about it.
yeah,
But I was personal training high school kids on the side. I found a way to do an adjunct teaching job for a couple grand a semester. Like the hustle has always been there because it needed to be there. If it wasn't there, I would have been filling out an application for Home Depot and I would have been working there instead. And
right.
so I've always had that hustle and just keep plugging away. Like I said, I wanted to be a college strength coach. I wanted to keep that going, but I needed to find some other things to kind of support that financially. I got incredibly lucky. I rolled into this position here at URI. I'm from here, born and raised. I didn't go to school here, but I went to summer
Uh-huh.
camps and I played here as a kid and did all that. And 20 minutes down the road from where I grew up, and then my mom lives 10 minutes away now, so we can bring the kid over to grandma's whenever we
Oh,
need
that's
to.
awesome.
So I'm spoiled in that regard. And then again, the hustle continues, right? So I became an assistant here and then kept doing good things and going above and beyond. And you don't know when you're going to get rewarded, but eventually, the head guy ended up leaving. I walked into the head strength coach position and again, continue to keep doing things of saying, okay, if I keep putting in work, how can I set myself up for a promotion down the road? Was promoted to an associate D role in 2023. But I tell our assistants, I tell our interns too, it's a little different because I can put in 80 hours a week now and I'm going to get paid the same as if I work 60 hours a week. It's tough when you're at that point. Now you need to find ways to prove that you're worth a promotion down the road, but those things can't scale exponentially as the stuff you do on the side. The stuff you do on the
Yes.
side, there's no limit. Um, but
Right. I mean,
kept kept
every
climbing.
business, right? Every
Yeah,
business, every university, they have a budget, and this is what we have in the payroll pool in a sense. And this is what in our school, what that role dictates pay. What that means in terms of your output can vary between, like, you got a new incoming class, you got more obligations, you got to start the process of training all over. I know strength coaches like in the middle, preseason, middle of season, it's every day, 7 days a week, right? It's all day,
yeah,
every day.
yeah,
And sometimes there might be a period where it's a little bit less, but and at the bigger schools, right? Even like the big schools like the Alabamas and stuff like that. Now, yes, those dudes are making money, right? Like the head strength coaches at those schools are making some serious boku, but they're being leaned on heavy, right? Like, I mean, it's a grind for sure, for
there's
sure.
a trade-off at the FCS level for me at least of a little bit more security and a little bit more balance in terms of expectations and things like that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. How
but
important was it? I mean, again, for you being a family man and kind of growing up in the area, it
mhm.
must have been a really exciting opportunity to be able to come back to your area to and get a good quality job that, for all intents and purposes, a lot of people would be totally fine with and, make a good living and doing what you do and being happy being a strength coach. And it's kind of was
Yep,
the goal, right? Like, I want to be a strength and conditioning coach, blah, blah, blah. At the university, you did that.
yep.
And then again, what led to the thought process of like, well, this is great. I got this kind of, let's call it on lockdown in a sense. We're doing a great job. We're turning out great athletes. They prove from my perspective, and obviously Dan being an alumni, so he's much more in tune.
He's
The
bragging every
qual,
day. Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, his jersey's hanging in his all. We break his chops all the time. It's like picture Dan, leading the down block, and his jersey's on the wall,
yep, yep.
right? But you know what led to you wanting to do more? I got this on lockdown. I got a good job. We're turning out good athletes, right? The program's consistently gotten better. And obviously now with the NIL and the funding that we've been able to attract better athletes, what started moving you in the direction of like more?
Yeah. So, like you said, I got to a point where I'm feeling pretty good financially now, and I don't need to start working on these other things for more money. I'm working on these things for a bigger reason than that. And I think
Hmm.
sometimes the hard part with, side hustles and side projects is people say, "Oh, I need a side hustle just so I can make more money." If you ever go into the project with the sole goal of making more money, I can promise you it's going to be a lot harder to make more money. I
Yes.
started putting educational courses and content out there for coaches, and my thought is there's a lot of football coaches out there. There's a lot of high school coaches out there that don't have the knowledge that I have, that don't have the background, the schooling, and the 10 plus years of working at the college level. They don't know how to put a good program together, but they want to put a good program together. They know what's bad, but they don't know necessarily how to fix it. So I started putting educational stuff out there, not for financial gain and benefits. Like, yeah, that's I don't do it for free. So I put that out there, but it's more to try and make a difference and say, okay, this is different than when I grew up training for football. There's a better way to
Yeah.
do it. And, I can work with 100 football players a day here. But if I educate 10 coaches and then they train their 10 high school programs, I've started to make a big difference. And
Sure.
so the why and the reason for wanting to do these things always has to be just bigger than, oh, I want to make more money or I need to make more money. I tell our assistants
Yeah.
the same thing. If you're going to work on a side project, do it because you enjoy it. Do it because it interests you and it's fun for you. And if it's not, if you don't have the passion behind it, you're never going to do all the little nitty gritty things you need to really scale it up and take it to another level.
Yeah, 100%. Like most people don't spend their entire lives in the gym without loving it, right? Like I was training before I owned a gym. I would have been training if I had been in construction or research. I was going to school for research. I was like biology, molecular biology, chemistry, stuff like that. So I was thinking like PT school, at one point med school, at one point like actual like clinical research type stuff. I thought about doing my PhD, and it just always kept circling back to the passion of being in the gym, owning my own business, and that entrepreneurial bug, right? Without that, there is no success, right? You can be good, you can be a good coach. You're not going to be in it for a long time if you don't really love it and passionate about it. So yeah, obviously, like for you, football has been a passion. Training football, specific strength and conditioning has been a real passion of yours. It's your obvious superpower and skill set. That's what you do every day. So how much of it is taking the lessons you've learned, the things that you see, the transition of athletes over the years, and just really just showcasing some of the things that you've done over the years and showing coaches another way, giving them structure and a plan.
Yeah,
Talk a little bit about that.
I think so much of it just comes from me being willing to put myself out there and allow not only doors to open for me and opportunities to open for me, but to open that door for coaches to ask me stuff too. And I think a lot of, the courses and stuff I put together is because people will ask me questions like, "Hey coach, you're doing a great job at URI. I see you doing this, this, and this. What would you do with my high school team? Or what would you do in this situation? I only have X number of days a week." All these questions I've collected and said, okay, I'm sick of answering these one at a time. Let me put them into a course of like, here's all the answers that people have asked me. Here's what you need to know, or things that I've been passionate about. One of them is adding. We do contact prep, which is something that prior to COVID wasn't really a thing. It wasn't popular. Like it looks like wrestling. It looks like bumping and shoving, and lifting weights is what the off season's all about. Why are we doing these things? And I started sharing like this is why we're doing it in our program right now with our guys. This is why I think it's valuable. And enough people started asking questions. I said, all right, let me condense this into a way that one, you can learn everything, and then two, you can use it with your athletes and make them better. So it happens kind of organically of just putting yourself out there and saying, here's what I'm proud of, here's what I'm passionate about, here's what I'm interested in. And the response you get back is going to tell you where to go next,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
if you don't put
Sure,
yourself
sure.
out there, you're never going to have that conversation.
Right, right.
And
Hey, look, I can agree more, right? When I started the gym, I was like, I'm only training athletes. I don't want to train adults. Adults are pain in the ass, prima donnas. Now we're in an affluent area. I don't want to train these rich assholes like, blah, blah, blah. I only want to work with kids, and so Varsity House, the original version of Varsity House was one of our catchphrases was, for athletes by athletes, right? And it was like, that was it. We were the athlete builder. And we did that for years. And then I had a client, Lance, who, I talk about a ton. He's a good friend of mine. He's a great guy. He's become our financial advisor. My son calls him Uncle LD. Like we're obviously his son's getting married. We're going to the wedding. It's like, they become like family friends. And he's been with me since absolute day one. Like before I even opened the gym, I was training his daughter in 2005 before I opened the gym. Right.
Mhm.
And Lance was badgering me about training. Right. And I finally broke me down. And like you said, like if I didn't you know, put it out there, I didn't take a chance. I didn't open my mind to change and something different, right? We wouldn't be what we are today. Right. And I
Yeah.
trained Lance and my mindset was pretty closed minded. Then I'm like, my first inkling was like, all right, I'm gonna train this guy and I'm gonna smash him into oblivion and he's never coming back and he's not gonna bother me no more. Right.
Yeah.
And I did that. And that son of a bitch kept coming back for 15 years, right? And here we are today. And he started the adult program here, and he transformed our lives. And I tell him all that time. If it wasn't for Lance, varsity has to be a completely different business. I'd probably still be in a smaller box training athletes, maybe different, maybe happy in some ways, sadder in others, but financially and growth wise, wouldn't be able to impact our community, transform so many lives, and give the career paths that we have to so many of our coaching staff here, without stabilizing the business with an adult population that is growing tremendously at this point. And obviously, that we're spawning off other adult personal training studios, small group training
Yep.
studios, and those are 95% adults. And I go all the way back to the first time that I trained Lance, and then he brought his wife in, and then his wife brought a couple of her friends, and then we had like a little group of adult training. We're like, you know what? Why don't we do something fun just for them? Because we had athlete combines at the time and stuff like that. That was big back in the day when like the NUC combines and stuff like that were really big. We ran a version of our own called the Northeast Scouting Combine. We
Yep.
also had a video recruiting company, which was called Varsity Highlights, where we're doing like recruiting videos and stuff like that. So we were deep in the athletes. So we're like, you know what? Why don't we recruit something for the adults? 6 week transformation is born,
Yep.
multi-million-dollar product for our business, literally
Still
real
rolling
time.
today.
Last week, 160 people we sold to a 6 week transformation, $790, basically an $800 product that we sold 160 people. You do the math on that shit, right? Out of those people, we'll probably convert nearly half of them to memberships, and you know. I don't have to tell you the money there, and that's a game changer on the business side. And that all went back to me saying, you know what, maybe the boundaries that I've put up and the ideologies that I put up need a little bit more flexibility, and like you said, like opening your mind to something new and different and putting that out there. If you didn't try, you don't put it out, nobody benefits.
And again, you didn't do that with the thought of I need to make more money. How can I make more money? You did that because you wanted to open that up, that training, and say, you know what, let's open this up to the adults, you
Yes,
know?
yes,
And that's the difference
yes.
is again, doing it for the right reasons and doing it for a bigger purpose is going to stick. It's going to last longer. It's going to be better
Yep.
than if you're just doing it to try and make money. I
Yeah,
give
I
the
mean, I
example.
wanted to give back to those adults and have some fun, and I also wanted it to be like I said to myself, like, if we're going to do this and we're going to train some adults, we're going to do it the Varsity House way. And this is going to be an athletic based strength program. We're going to focus on power and velocity development for adults. And we had those original women, like I would say, like we called them the Woodcliff Lake Crew, was a bunch of like Lance and his wives and his friends, and we had them jumping on boxes, doing stuff that they never thought they would do, and the results were unbelievable. I mean, we had fit, athletic 40-something-year-old women who were playing tennis at the time and crushing it, and like these were amazing. Like they were like, this is amazing. Like,
Yeah. I give the example, our guy Brendan Fleming, he just opened
hmm
up his gym in upstate New York, the Armory
yep,
there. He was my assistant here at Rhode Island. He ended up
yeah.
leaving because he had this passion and said, I want to open up a gym. And I said, why do you want to open up a gym? Do you want to just do it because you want to make more money than what I'm giving you now? He said, no, the gym has always been a community. It's been a place that
Yes.
you could go to learn and grow and get better and change your life. And he wanted to open his gym not to make more money, but to provide that place. I always talk
Yes.
about there's three places you spend your time: at home, at work, and then everything else is fighting for the third place in your life. So
Yeah.
he's creating that third place for people where, you know what, it's part of my routine. I go to the Armory, I go and train there. It's changing my life, it's making me better. So again, when you have that reason, you have that why, I have no doubt that 5 years from now, he's going to be blowing up and he's going to be crushing it because he's
Yeah,
got the
he's a
right
great dude. We
reason in
met him.
place.
Great guy, young and motivated, hungry,
Yep.
willing to do the work. I
Yep.
remember being in my mid 20s and just being willing to work 7 days a week from like literally 5 in the morning till 9 at night. Now I would probably fall apart like
I
freaking
told
blue
him, I said,
cheese.
do it now before you have kids, man. It gets a lot more challenging once you get the kids in the
Oh,
mix.
crumble. Oh, for sure, for sure. And, I
Uh,
think like again, like someone like us who are involved in sports most of our lives, I've naturally progressed to being involved in my son's sports, and I don't want to miss any of that stuff. Like I want to be able to be there. So I'm very lucky that what we've created, like yourself, has afforded me a lifestyle that at times I work my ass off. At times I got to travel a lot and be away from my family, but the majority of the time I get to take them on the journey with me Antonio, my son, comes here all the time. Dan's son, Chase, comes here all the time. It's great to have our families here and be part of that. And if I need to, because it's my own business, if I got a bug out at like Tuesday, I was the guest reader at my son's school. If I got a bug out at 1 o'clock and go read some kiddie books to a bunch of little first graders, I
Heck
get to
yeah.
do that, right? And it was an absolute joy and pleasure. I had a smile on my face the entire rest of the day because those kids are hilarious.
The other part of
Um,
that is that you've built systems in your business that allow you to go do that.
yeah,
There's a lot of front end work, there's a lot of stuff you have to do ahead of time, and you got to learn those lessons and kind of take those lumps now when you're younger of like, okay, I build my business here, and then how do I set a system up to keep this thing rolling so that I can step away and go to the elementary school in the afternoon on a Tuesday and the whole place doesn't crumble, the whole place doesn't fall
yes.
apart. That's the
The pa-
that's
the
the next step.
passion gets the ball rolling.
Yep.
Passion is the why. Passion is the creation of the momentum.
Mhm.
Systems is the sustainability and the freedom, right? So let's
Mhm.
talk about that a little bit. Talk to me. Let's do this in two parts. I want to know about the systems and processes that you're using as a professional strength coach at the collegiate level that are for your staff. Like, what are some of the core values and things that are critically important to having a great culture, a great team, and great awareness around growth and improvement as professionals. And then we'll talk a little bit about some of the lessons you've learned, good and bad, about trying to sell products on the private side, which is a
Yeah.
completely different animal.
Yeah. So I mean, I take a little bit of a different approach in terms of other strength coaches. We have our handbook in terms of here's how we're going to operate as a staff. Here's the things that we hold valuable. But I tell my assistants, I mean, when you're out there, you're the head coach of your sports and your teams, and realistically, everyone has the same amount of authority when we go out there. There are very few things that you guys can't solve yourself.
Yeah.
You should be able to solve those. And if you really get stuck, and you need somebody to put the hammer down, that's when I can use my authority card and put the hammer down for you. But
Hmm.
in terms of anybody should be able to walk into our weight room and get answers from any of our coaches and be completely fine. A younger me, I'm thinking about when I took 6 weeks off when my son was born. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't look at emails. I said, I'm gone for 6 weeks. My two guys got it. And you know, 25-year-old me, 26-year-old me is like, wow, you took 6 weeks off. That I don't know how you did that. I don't know how you weren't checking your phone every day. Like, part
Yeah,
of it is once you see your kid, like that's a whole different thing. You realize what's important and what's not in your life. But
for
the other
certain.
part is I took my time to set everything up so that when I leave, no balls get dropped. You know, that being said, the business isn't going to grow or my department isn't going to grow and evolve without me. If it
Yeah.
if it can, then I'm replaceable. You should get rid of me. But it can maintain and stay the same if you have the systems in place. Some of the advancements and we got some new TVs going in, we got some new projects we're working on. That's why I'm here, is to kind of continue to push the envelope. But if I ever
Hmm.
need to step away, there's no reason the day-to-day operation should ever take a dip. If you set
Yeah.
up the right things and the expectations and the standards, and when things aren't going the right way, you need to nip it in the butt quickly. And I think that's
Yes.
the thing that people have a hard time with is the confrontation and say, I don't like what we're doing here. I don't like how you handled that situation. I still love you. I'll let them know, hey, you're not getting fired today, but that's not how we're doing things, and
Yeah.
that's not going to
Yeah.
help
There's
us.
got to be some standards. And look,
You have
and
to.
I'm
I
all
think that's a
for.
hard. People don't want to hurt feelings, and it's like
Yeah.
if I
I.
hired you, it's because you can get your feelings
Yeah.
hurt
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
understand it's coming from a place of love.
Yeah. And I think like whether it's in everything is a business, right? At the collegiate level, it's a multi-million-dollar business. And,
Mhm.
and and I think like
Mhm.
you have to remember that at the end of the day, the goal of any business is to turn a profit. That is the goal. All right. And yes, my number one goal and the reason Varsity House, like we said, the momentum got started was because of a passion for coaching, a passion for helping. I did not have great male mentors in my life. And I think that becoming that filled a void for me. I really, really loved coaching kids. I loved working with young men. I loved coaching football, wrestling, and the grind that I saw in that. And I felt like, as I spent 3 to 6 hours a week with these kids, which was probably double to triple what they were spending with their own fathers a lot of the times. And you kind of became a mentor, coach, leader in their lives. And I really felt empowered from that. All right.
Hmm. Hmm.
But at the end of the day, if Varsity House doesn't turn a profit and doesn't make money, I can't do this job, right? And then I have to go drive a UPS truck or something like that, and I
Right.
got to make a
Yep.
paycheck, right? So, um, what are some of the, in a sense, how important is it then, in terms of hiring the right people and making sure that the expectations are crystal clear?
Yeah. So I can tell you this. My field, business, whatever it is, you got to get the right people because that is not just a small mistake. That can be a mistake that compounds for years and years and years and years, and it's hard to change that. So making sure doing due diligence and really taking your time, that's the most important financial decision you can make because that person can amplify your business or they can completely drain your business. So,
Yes.
unfortunately, I've had to hire people. That's the nature of this field is there is some turnover, but I
Hmm.
have had some great people on staff and continue to have some great people on staff that
Yeah.
that first and foremost care about the athletes, make sure they're safe, make sure they train hard, but have pride in their work. And then also, I ask them, I say, what are you trying to get out of this? How can I help you? And they have very clear goals for themselves. One of my
Yeah.
assistants, was a head strength coach at another school and came down to be an assistant because he wanted a little bit more balance in his family life. He was driving an hour out and an hour back, and his wife was working a different job. He said, I want to make sure that I can go home and spend time with my wife and eventually start a family. I said, okay, I can provide that for you. And knowing that, I give him certain jobs and expectations that fits that for him. So I'm
Yeah.
not going to ask him to stay late. Now, my young guy is, he came in and he wants to be a college strength coach. He wants to climb the ranks. He said, Coach, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to be here in 5 years. I said, that's okay. Because now I know what you want to do. I can push you and challenge you in the right direction to
Yeah.
help you grow and get ready for the next job, whatever that is for
Right.
him. So clear
Yeah.
expectations and clear goals of what they want. And then everyone does a great job of fitting the standards and policies that we have. So with that staff turnover, we got to make sure that we always have our programming. I can go back to when I first took over the job and look at every single program that we've done, even though we've had some coaching changes, and you can see the consistency.
Yeah.
When Johnny leaves and Joey comes in, Joey's still running a program that looks very similar to Johnny. Like they're not,
Hmm.
wildly different styles and
Yep.
philosophies. That's a big one. And then our communication is again over communicate. Like send me an email.
Yes.
Like we may have just had a conversation. The office is connected to mine. Put in an email again, just so I have it and I'm keeping that on file. Uh,
Sure.
I'd rather do that than miscommunicate and then say, "Oh, you remember we talked about it?" No, I'm not going to remember. Even if I
No,
tell
there's
you I'm
no
going to
such
remember,
thing
I'm
as,
not going to remember. So put
yeah,
it
there's
all
no
down, put
such
it
thing
all
as
on.
under communicating for sure.
And then just understand, I always tell our staff too, like, we work with a lot of other departments. We work with obviously all the sports, we work with the medicine side, we work with administrators. Everyone has their own bubble. And they are so focused on their job and their work, and they've got their head down trying to, help the organization win. They're not maybe always thinking about your circle and your bubble. So
Hmm.
don't be upset when things aren't going the right. A coach comes in angry about this, and that, and now they show up a half hour late, and you only get a half hour to train them. Understand that their bubble is different, and you got to work
Yeah.
together, right, to build relationships and things like that. Don't come in complaining. Don't come in saying, "Oh, I don't like this, that." What have you done to kind of solve that situation? Now, if you just work
Sure.
with the bad people, okay, I get it. You gotta you gotta make that work, right? Not everyone's gonna be the nicest person to work with, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that can get solved just by being a human being. And we have some
I
really
think
good
humility
teams.
solves a lot of things. I mean, playing team ball is a big part of it, right? Like we know there's
Yeah.
a lot of moving parts at the collegiate level, the private sector, and the private sector business. Especially a business like ours that's training multiple demographics. Obviously, we're in a big growth phase. We have our consulting company, which is a completely separate business, but it does always kind of circle back and through the gyms because that is the showcase of what we're doing with the business of strength. And our team is some of our team is involved there as well. And I think like the realization that, hey, look, like, playing team ball is mission critical here. And obviously we could use a football analogy, right? Every down, every yard matters, right? And so that means working together in a cohesive group, offense and defense. And there's lots of it's more than just scoring touchdowns. There's lots of different phases to the game, right? And you could have, in a sense, you could have people that are really great at one thing, but they're crappy at a bunch of other things. And eventually it's like, all right, well, that's going to be a problem because we're not playing team ball. And like the Randy Mosses, the TOs, like those guys are amazing players, but they got kind of like shooed out of every team because like Randy Moss catches 25, 30 touchdowns for the Patriots and they tell him to take a hike because, he was a bad culture fit, a bad teammate. Right. And it's like, all
I
right,
think the culture thing is hard to figure out, but once you kind of have a good understanding of what it is, and you can continue to fit the right pieces into your culture, and they can
yeah,
continue to grow, it gets even better. I think our culture is that we take a lot of pride in our work. We do a great job in our department. At the same time, we see the bigger picture, and all of us have families. All of us have lives outside of here. All of us have hobbies, and our kids see that, our coaches see that, and they understand, okay, this is not a staff that's here from 5 a.m. till 7 p.m. Like that's just not how they operate. But when they are here, when they are doing things, they're doing a phenomenal job.
yeah,
And
yeah. And
just
and
again,
look,
trying
and
to
like,
embody that for everybody.
of course. And I think like everybody's got their own different usage of money and time, right? And what they do with it. Again, like,
Yep.
how you spend your money versus how I spend my money could be in two wildly different universes, how we spend our time and the hobbies we have. So you have to be like, let's call it sensitive to those things because everybody's into different stuff, right? And you're dealing with humans and humans are
Yep.
inherently emotional, right? But at the number one core of it, like you said, is the culture of hard work, consistency, and a commitment. And it's never been we've always, as you've spent a lot of time talking to me and Dan, like, I don't want to be what I had when I grew up in the industry. I don't want coaches being here from 6 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night, 6 days a week, killing them.
Yep.
No, only getting paid for sessions that are checked out sessions and stuff like that. Like we pay people's salaries. You're paid for your work. You're paid for your programming. You're paid for your thoughts, ideas, and time. Right. We pay very, very well, 401ks, benefits, and things like that. And I think that creates a culture of like, hey, like we're given to get. But just like anything, there's always going to be seasons where you got to give a little bit more to get some more,
No
right?
doubt.
And I think like again that gets the younger generations that's gotten a little bit harder to convey. It's like, look, man, like before you get that 100K job, like you probably got to put in like some grind in. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
just like fall out of a tree for like you can't ask for more and do less over a period of time and just expect more money. Like that
Exactly.
I don't know where that equation got built. I don't know, what excuse my,
You know,
I don't know what Gen Z mathematician, worked out that equation, but it doesn't work in my book.
the other thing that popped in my head, just thinking about what you had to say there. One of the things that when I first took over, I said, what is going to amplify this department? What is the number one thing? Because you can only fight for a certain number of things at a time. You can't try and
Hmm.
get a new weight room built and hire more staff and increase salaries. And so what are the things I'm going to fight for first? And the two things were increase our assistant salary, which is going to more likely keep them here, which is less turnover, which again is going to improve our culture if people stay for a longer period of time. And then two is it was fighting to get more staff for me. And when I first started as the head guy, it was two of us and a part-timer, and we're up to four full-timers now.
Mm.
And the idea and how I sold it to them is if I'm coaching football at 6 in the morning and then I have to stay until 4 p.m. to do track and field, is track and field getting my best? No shot. No
No,
shot.
no
Because I'm
shot.
smoked
No
by
shot.
4 p.m., especially if I've been
Yeah.
out coaching multiple groups of football, multiple this
Yeah.
and
You're
that.
on the field all morning and stuff. Yeah.
But not only, if we hire more coaches, they can work a little bit more with each team, a little bit more in depth. And at the same time, it's allowing the rest of our staff to give their best to their teams because they're not getting stretched as thin. And then they
Yeah.
can go home and clock out and spend time with their family. And what happens when you spend time with your family? You wake up the next day and go, oh, I'm excited to go back to work. When you work 6 to 6, you get home, you have dinner, you watch TV for an hour, and then you go to bed and you wake up, it feels like Groundhog's Day. And
Yeah.
that's how people get burnt out and ground out. Is because they're just like, I can't keep doing this. But when you left at, 1 o'clock, you went and read at the elementary school, you had a great dinner, you had some time to spend with your wife, and then you go to bed and you wake up, you don't mind going to work the next day because it
No.
makes it all worth it. So
No. And look, like I
finding
said,
those
it's
ways
it's
to
see
amplify your business. And for us, it was hiring more
sure.
staff. And that was
Yeah.
such a game changer for us.
And we saw the same thing. Obviously, paying people the realization that hey, look, honestly, it started with like Big Mike, who we talked
Mhm.
about, right? And it's like,
Yep.
all right, well, like this guy's really great. We really love this guy from a core value perspective, from a human. Like Mike would be my friend if he had nothing to do with my business. Like if I met him at a gym and we were like training together at a gym, like he'd be my going out for pizza and a beer guy, right? He's a good dude,
Yep.
right? So it's like, all right, we love this guy. He's a killer worker, great dude, great coach. It's like, all right, well, he can't make you can't make 50 grand a year as a 30 something year old married man. Like that's not a that you can't. You know, what are you doing? You living in him and his wife are going to live in a 1 bedroom apartment in Newark. You know what I mean? Like it's just not happening. So the reality is that was kind of the anticipus of like, hey, and obviously Mike's would be 15 years ago, so 15 years now, going on year 16, so it's been a long
You don't
time. But
mind
like,
that 1 bedroom apartment. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, 10, 15 years ago, he's 23 years old,
Yeah.
eat shit, dude, like
Yeah.
whatever. But like, but at 30, it was like, I remember Mike coming to us and be like, all right, guys, like, I'm gonna start making some money soon, and I was like, all right, we gotta take care of Big Mike. And then it just came the realization that if we want good people to stay and continue to deliver quality results both to the business and to the community of clients, that hey, look, money talks and bullshit walks, dude. Money is a reality of human life, right? And there is and as everybody who listens to this knows, and the reason why most gym owners follow us is because their goal is to make more money. The world just keeps getting more and more expensive, and the one commonality amongst gym owners is we're all fucking terrified to raise our prices.
Yes.
you know, so the
Have you
school.
heard of
This
the
Go
four
ahead, go
P's?
ahead.
Have you
What's
heard of the
that?
four P's?
What's that?
So when you're looking for a job or you have a job, right? And we're trying to keep Big Mike, it comes down to the four P's. And it comes down to pay, personal life, career progression, and then a sense of purpose.
Yes.
And if you've got all four of those things, you're at your dream job. Stay there. Keep going. If you've only got three of those, leave for the one that offers you all four. If you've only got two, you can do better than that. You can find a better. And if it only offers one of those things, it's not worth it. So, I tell our staff,
It's a
I'm always going
great.
to fight for I'm always going to fight for the pay one. I'm going to try and get you more pay. I
That's a
guarantee
golden
that's
nugget,
probably the
but people write
right.
that
I
one
know
down.
that's
That's
going
a
to be the limiting factor, but I'm going to give you personal life back. I'm going to make sure that you're not here from 6 to 6. I'm going to give you a career progression. You tell me how you want to progress in your career. I'm going to give you opportunities and find ways to help you grow. And you're not going to just feel like you're an assistant. You're going to feel like you're continuing to get better as a coach. And then
Mhm.
sense of purpose, you're going to feel like the work you're doing here is making a difference. You're making the athletes better. You're making our programs better. We're hopefully winning championships. So I'm always thinking about those four P's, and am I
I love it.
providing those for our coaches? If not, how do I do that? How do I help my staff get those four P's? And sometimes, unfortunately, it means finding them a better job or a different job, whatever it is. Um, but hopefully
I
not.
think
Hopefully I'm working on
I
those.
love that. I love that. I'm gonna steal that, and that's a really great that's a
I
really
stole that
great.
from what's his name, the rugby guy, Kier One Flat. So in the strength world, they know about him.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes. I love that. That's
yeah,
really
give him
great.
credit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's fantastic. I mean, I think that I mean, for the majority of people, that sums it up. And again, some people like if you think of those four things as the knobs on like an old
Mhm.
school like stereo equalizer, some people are going to be more in tune to pay versus personal life. And again, that may be different stages of your life. Like when I was 24, pay was here, personal life was here, right? I didn't care about personal life. I
Well,
just I
you
got to
were
make
you were
money.
growing as a profession. You were moving up in the career. So you know what? I'll eat shit for a little bit and
Yes,
know that once I start getting a little more pay and then I can turn the progression. I don't need to accelerate my career as fast as when I was 23, 24.
correct. And I
Exactly.
think a lot of
They're
people
dials.
so purpose is the one that I love what you said about having clear goals, because that is your, like, in a sense, your North Star and your purpose. And it's like, what is the ultimate goal? What do you want your life to be? What may, again, if I have like a person on the team who's married or has a family, like I sit down with Adam, right? Our head coach, Adam, right? And Adam is our director of training. He's our COO, and he's a partner in the business, and he just had a baby, right? Him and his wife Becca, great people, and they have a young child at home, and it's like, dude, like, tell me what the next 3 years look like. So you're in 3 years, you're still just as excited, if not more excited, about what you're doing with us. What does that look like? What's the time frame look like? What is your wife like? And it's important to me. Like, hey, come over for dinner. I want to have you and your wife over for dinner. What's important to you guys? How can I get you there? How much time
It's
do you
it's
need? How
my
much
number
money do you
one
want to make?
interview question. How you answer that question tells me so much.
Yeah.
Why do I hire you? What is this going to look like for you? If you tell me you just need a job and you applied for every job you see, like no shit, I get that. Fresh out of school, you probably applied to every job you can find.
Hmm.
But if you can't find the bigger purpose or the bigger reason or why, then I can't push you in the right direction. So I can't hire you just because you need a job. That's not a good
Yeah.
enough reason.
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to, do you have a purpose or are you just trying to make more money?
Yeah.
I don't need the
Yeah.
people that need, I need people with more passion and purpose behind their life.
I love that. I love that. Those are great tips for hiring in any aspect, whether it's in the private sector or otherwise. Cool. Great stuff, Scott. I love that. So, Scott, tell me a little bit about, some of the lessons you're learning. We talked a bit at the NSCA event about some of the things you're trying to do on the private side with selling, with the training programs and stuff like that. What are some of the highs, the lows, the pitfalls, and lessons you've learned as trying to become now, in a sense, an entrepreneur on your own and moving
Yeah.
towards that direction?
Yeah, I mean, so putting the courses out there, and I don't have I don't call Cal and say, Cal, how'd you do it? How would you put that stuff out there? I probably should have and could have.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he would have picked up the phone and answered, but I needed to kind of figure these things out on my own. So I started out, I used, this software platform, and it was great when you sell a program and you make some money off it, it's cool. But then eventually it was starting to be really successful, and they're taking 10% of every sale. And I'm like, okay, lesson learned. Check, what is the price of entry here? And 10% when you're making $40 isn't a big deal, but when you're making a lot more than that, they start taking a bigger cut. I'm like, yeah, this
Yeah.
hurts a little bit. So taking my time and learning about, what's the best platform to launch this on. And at first I'm just selling the programs. I'm like, 6 months down the road, I wish I could have emailed everybody and said, hey, did you like the program? So then you got to learn, okay, I should start collecting emails. Okay, I
Right.
probably shouldn't send these from my Scott Leech 72 Hotmail Gmail email. Like I should probably get my own email address that looks a little bit
Yeah.
cleaner. Maybe I should get a platform that, automates some emails so that when you buy a pro, so I had to learn these kind of lumps one by one by
Sure.
one. And my Twitter feed now, there's a strength coach Twitter feed for me, and there's a business education Twitter feed for me, and kind of learning some pieces and stuff along the way. But you just got to put something out there and make the first dollar. Because once you've done
Yeah.
that, again, we talked about momentum, the ball gets rolling. You say, all right, how can I turn one into two? How can I turn two into four? Um, one of the things too is I wish I had done this earlier, is I was doing everything as a sole proprietor and just, dealing with that and mixing it in with my family taxes. And it's at the point now where it's like, I should have filed for an LLC and done a better
Yeah.
job of tracking business expenses and doing a
Sure.
better job. I was able to write a bunch of stuff off, but at the same time, I wish I separated or, put all my profits or all that into a business account.
Mhm.
And then it's easier to track expenses and money you brought in and
And,
handle
and the
those.
data and the money is the truth, right? So you
Yeah.
can see like what you're actually spending and making on this, in a sense, at first was just like a little side hustle hobby that you really
Yeah.
want, a passion project. And then as it starts to grow, it's like, all right, well, maybe this thing's got some legs here. I better start treating it like a real business and managing the money, the marketing, and the process of it like a real small business, right? And that's what it is.
And I guess the other piece of advice is listen to your wife too. And my wife is she's a wedding photographer, so she's been a solo entrepreneur for a couple of years now. So,
Okay.
the number of times she told me, hey, you got to get your LLC stuff done, or you should really, you should be tracking your mileage when you're going and speaking at these conferences and things like that, because you can write that off. And, I treated it like, you know, it's a side hustle, it's just a little passion project on the side. And then, one day you're going to wake up and it's not that, it's a business.
Yeah.
So treat
Yeah.
it like a business. She's like, you are a business. Treat yourself like one. And
In the private sector, I call this thing, I
listen to
call
her.
it yeah, dude, my if my wife ever listened to this, she'd be like, D, right? But we have something in the business of strength we call the coach owner paradox, and it's more on the private sector side, but it's a similar ideology of like, uh, every gym owner, very few gym owners start off with like the idea of running a real gym business. They start off as like a coach trainer who wants to start training people, and I'm going to open up a business, right? But the second you sign the lease, open up the doors on your new gym, you're no longer a trainer, you're a business owner, right?
Right.
And that coach owner paradox is that intersect where you're coaching and you're a good coach and you've gotten busy coaching, and now the business is starting to become a real business, and you start to lose hold or lose grip on the business functionality, the sales and marketing and the word of mouth that you did to get you to your first like 50 clients or 100 clients or whatever is starting to crumble a little bit, and you're starting to hit the attrition bug. And then like, you've never really hired and developed an employee before, and now you're like, I'm so busy, I got to hire somebody. So you hire, what a lot of gym owners do is they go hire a friend or another trainer that they knew or whatever, and it's maybe, like you said, not a good core value fit. They didn't have that passion, purpose. They weren't really tuned in with where they need to be on their pay and their personal life. And like, that goes south. And now you're back on the training floor full time. And like, so this intersect of like, being busy as a coach and then the business being busy as a business and needing you to be more of a business person. And that's where we start to see it's either they learn and grow and they scale, or it's a plateau and decline, right? And that's where
And
we
I
come
think
in.
the other lesson there is ask for the help and get the resources, not when it's too late, but before you even get to those points. You can
Yeah.
save yourself, spend $1,000 and go to the course, or spend whatever and go to business of strength and get the lessons now, write it off as a tax expense, and you're going to learn the lessons instead of getting 5 years down the road and then you wonder why you can't scale and you don't know how to scale, and then you got to go back and redo everything, and it becomes an
Yes.
even bigger problem, and then you're going to pay somebody 15 grand to go back in and fix all your systems when you could have just learned those, paid a little extra, get,
Yes.
have the phone consult with the experts. I spent an hour. I talked to Dan a couple of weeks ago, and just that 1 hour conversation, we're going back and forth, and it gave me so much clarity of where I need to go and what my next step should be, and how can I not just take my next step, but how that's going to set me up 2 or 3 years from now. All of those things, and you just got
Yeah.
to do it. Ask for the help because people
Ounce of
want to help you.
prevention. Was it ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
start early. We're very, I think it's starting to change. Again,
I get
I,
it too. When you open a business for the first time, and it's hard. You don't have the money, and you're like, oh, I don't know if I should. You got to make the decision that can this amplify my business, and if it
I
can, do it.
love that. I love
You
that
know.
litmus test, amplify my business, because it's like, all right, do I need the new monolift that costs 7 or 10 grand,
Yep.
or should I spend 5 grand on marketing and 5 grand on business coaching? You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like,
Exactly.
and it's like that's going to amplify the business. Where the monolift is maybe like this cool thing for like 10 of your powerlifting buddies that want to come lift on the monolift, but like you probably don't need it for your 12-year-old high school or 12-year-old middle school girls group. You know what I mean? So,
Yep.
so
But I
cool,
mean,
man.
get somebody to set up your email funnels, and get somebody to
Yeah.
set up your ManyChat automations, and you know what? That's going to go a lot further. And then you'll be able to get 2 monoliths.
You know what though? Yes. I think it's just like everything in most people's lives. We like to stay within the realm of things that we know and we're comfortable with, right? And as a coach who maybe is a lifelong strength person, a lifelong gym rat, somebody who's passionate about performance or the X's and O's of human physiology, buying another gadget to train people with is like a quick dopamine fix, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, all right, if I just get these, 360 motion machines that cost, thousands of dollars, that's going to improve that. Now people are going to flood the doors. And it's like, all right, well, that's a gadget. It's a tool. It's super great. It definitely has some benefits, but maybe not necessarily the best thing that you need for your business, especially in the private sector. Overspending on equipment is a big no-no, right? And I think like a lot of people just wind up like kind of like staying in that comfort zone instead of, look, here's the truth. Being a leader of other men in and women in the strength world, the hardest conversation that you have every day is the conversation with yourself. Right.
Mm-hmm.
You maybe you are a really good coach, and part of it is ego, where you're like, I'm not making the money I want, but my perception is I'm this world class coach. I don't want to ask for help. And then people know, and it's like an exposure thing, or it's like, obviously like working on your marketing, becoming good at sales. Like that shit takes work. Like it might be
I
outside your comfort zone.
I say it all the time, and I can't say it enough. Coaches need coaches too.
Yeah.
And I learned that I wanted to pick up a new hobby, wanted to do something different. I was kind of getting in a rut training wise, and I started taking Muay Thai lessons. I got a
Oh,
place
shit.
down, 10, 15 minutes from my house, kicking,
Sick.
punching, throwing some elbows. But I didn't just show up to the Saturday class and kick the bag and try and fumble around and figure out what I'm doing. No, I went out and got a coach, and the coach puts me through the session and tells me what to do and tells me what I'm doing wrong. And my progress is going to be significantly better, and I'm going to enjoy it because I'm learning and they're telling me what I'm doing wrong and fixing my lessons now, than if I just bought a bag in my basement and went downstairs and kicked it and punched it a couple days a week. Would I still be doing more? Yeah, but it's not the same as getting a coach. Like, get coached
No,
up. And
absolutely.
sometimes strength coaches get kind of complacent in that because we're the experts and we know how to lift weights. So we're going to write our own training programs and do our own thing. You need somebody that can hold you accountable and then teach you the lessons that you may not necessarily know, and getting coached up, it's one of those things we forget about it because we're done playing sports and we're adults now. We're not on organized teams, but it can really skyrocket everything that you're trying to do is go out and get a coach.
Oh, sure. Especially in the realm of like, again, like personal development stuff too.
Yep.
Even just like you're, dealing with emotions and stuff like that. I think like we could all, everybody could use a little help in those
Yep.
regards. So Scott,
And don't
this
and
was,
don't get me wrong, I have plenty of mentors. I love connecting
yeah,
with people, but at the same time, that's not the same thing as a coach, right?
no,
A coach
no.
is a higher level for a reason. So
Yeah, and they're there to hold you accountable, and that's
exactly.
again, it's cool. Like your friends aren't they're like Scott. You got to get this done, Scott. You got to do these things, right? A coach is there for a reason. You hire, and I'm a big believer in
Put
skin
your
in the
money
game.
where your mouth is.
Fuck yeah, dude. Like I bought a book last night that was $650 for a book, right? And he does that on purpose. The guy he's one of the top marketers in the world. The book price was normally $1,000. He never
Mm,
discounts. He said, Joe, are we doing this shit? Here's a one-time deal. It's good till midnight. You don't buy it, I'm never sending you another email again. I was like,
yep,
all right, I'm buying the book, right? $600. How many times do you think I'm going to read that? I'm going to read the shit out of that book. I'm going to take
no
notes. I'm
doubt.
going to have a notebook, you know, this thick on that book because I paid $650 for that damn book, right? So it's the same thing when people hire us for the business of strength, and I know they got real money in it, and we're talking thousands of dollars. Not only does it amplify their pay attention, their give a shit factor, as we like to call it, it amplifies mine. Like it's my
Yep.
duty to deliver the goods, right? And I feel obligated now that you or somebody else has taken the opportunity and taken the chance on us and spent their hard earned money and time on me. And if I don't deliver, I suck, right? And so you take that with a grain of salt, and you take that with pride. So,
All comes back to passion, right?
yeah,
Is you're
baby.
putting money into it because you're passionate about it, and then you're gonna get that same passion received back.
Scott, this was awesome. We got to rewind for a part two. I would love to do it in person. We got to get you down to VH for an
I
in-service
gotta
or a
get down there.
workshop. You got to come down and hang out with us, man. We got to throw some
Yep.
weights around. Come play in my playground for a day. We'll come up and play in
Yes.
yours, right? You can play if you play in my toy box. I'll play in yours.
We'll make it happen.
For sure, man. Tell everybody where they can get more Scott Leach in their lives. Maybe get access to you and communicate with you on a deeper level.
Yeah, Twitter and Instagram. Just type in Scott Leach. I got to make them the same right now. I think they're like two different handles. So just
Hmm.
type in Scott Leach. You'll find me. I ain't hard to find.
No,
And
he's
then,
not.
I got to finish redoing the website right now, but scottleachtraining.com. It's where I'm going to post all my stuff and all that. And then, got some courses coming out, helping out some high school football coaches and things like that with their summer training coming soon. So, yeah, a couple things in the works. Stay tuned.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Thanks for coming on. Scott Leach, everybody. This is the business of strength. We'll catch you on the next one.